as it's lights out and away we go, and Piastri gets a...
And it's the review of the Bahrain Grand Prix, talking you through the major talking points from that Grand Prix. So I'm going to show you a few replays of what went on in slow-mo and a few clips and talk you through the shit show that is Formula One. So, first talking point, this is turn one, lap one. You've got Oscar Piastri made a good start, then Russell. Norris there made a cracking start, overtaking the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc. Then you've got Antonelli and you've got Gasly. And then you've got Hamilton, who's made a quality start. Hamilton is just about in 7th position at the moment, with Carlos Sainz in the Williams there on his outside, and Max Verstappen here. So Max at the moment is in 9th, but on the wider line, able to carry more speed. But the problem is, we'll get into this when Sky show us the replay of the start and we see the overheads, that Sainz actually pushes Hamilton off the track. And then, in doing so, when off the track, Verstappen goes through as well. Nothing's ever made of it, but that's the truth of the situation. But when we go through the replays, you'll see what actually happens here. So that is lap one, turn one. Later on around lap one, we've got Antonelli well off the track there, as you can see. Okay, we get told the notion of lap one incidents don't get investigated by the stewards. Now, the reality is there are mitigating circumstances for infringements on lap one. There can be, and that is that when a race starts, there are all the competitors converging at corners, lots of cars in a tight space, and therefore, if there are minor collisions, then they are often not punished because of the dynamics of the situation. And if cars have to run off track due to crowding and are trying to avoid collisions, they're not punished either because of the dynamic. However, once the field has begun to thin out, if you leave the track, well, you're breaching track limits. Does one of the factors come into play that on that first lap, you've done the formation lap, but then you've sat on the grid, your tyres may have cooled and your grip levels may have decreased. So on lap one, you're still finding your grip, and therefore, if you go off track, they don't penalise you. I don't know their thought process. Ultimately, should this be strike one for Antonelli? He's clearly off track. Okay, he's clearly off track. So is that strike one in terms of track limits for Antonelli? Because again, this is a key thing. We go through this, we get to a point where Antonelli's, we are told, is given his third strike, and then we see him go off track again, and then a few laps later, we hear that he gets a lap time deleted. And I don't see the punishments given for that. But again, this is something we'll come to. Things to consider though, as Formula One fans. Be aware, lap one incidents are not punished, but be aware of why. And that certain ones still should be. It's only the ones that are part of that dynamic of all cars converging into a tight space, and therefore a collision can sometimes be kind of accepted, not accepted, but excuses made for it because of that dynamic, or the notion of a competitor leaving the track to avoid a collision is excusable, okay, and therefore goes unpunished. But the field had begun to thin out by then. Okay, we're on lap two, and this is just talking about the dynamic of the tyres that each car has started on. So most cars on the grid have started on the soft compounder tyre. The Ferraris of Leclerc and Hamilton have started on mediums, as has Alonso in the Aston, Lawson in the RB, and Bortoleto in the Kick-Sauber. So what's that? 5 cars started on the medium, 15 cars started on the soft. Now, what we don't know as just mere fans of the sport, spectators from the outside, We don't know how those cars perform on those tyres and how those cars wear those relative different compound tyres. You know, do the Ferrari cars chew the soft compound of tyre up? Is that why they could only run the mediums? And then in that final stint, after the safety car period, when they change tyres, and you've got some cars going onto softs again, which you would assume would be the fastest tyre, but you're scared, will they make it to the end of the race? But Ferrari go onto hards, not feeling that necessarily that they can make the soft compound of tyre last to the end of the race. I don't know. We don't know. This is the thing. Unless you are part of the team, unless you are party to the information, all these test sessions that they do, all these practice sessions they do, running the programs that they do, and then observing the results of that, we don't know. So we as spectators can watch a Grand Prix, and in our heads we can be constructing strategy, but we're doing it blind. You know, I used to watch Grand Prix many, many years ago and say, oh, he should be pitting now. He should be pitting now. But actually, we didn't know because we don't know how those cars are performing and we don't know what they know. Okay? And with that, we can be more informed and we'll be better placed to make these decisions. But with that information, many of us can simply do the same job as those strategists that sit on the pit wall do. Anyway, we'll carry on. Okay, we're on lap 3 now, and it's just been announced by Crofty that Lando Norris is facing a potential time penalty for a start infringement. We'll come to that in a second. Brundle has this to say about it.
Yeah, that's usually based on some factual evidence before that gets put forward. That's not a gut feeling, is it? That tends to be something they've seen. Very bad news indeed, as you say, because he's...
And you can see the banner race control, Norris incident, out of position, noted. They asked Karun about it to see what Karun thinks about Lando being out of position at the start. So Karun tells us what he thinks in the comment section, and then Crofty and Brundle say this.
So that's a 5-second or a 10-second penalty for that?
At least, yeah.
At least, says Martin, at least a 5 or 10-second penalty. Thanks for that, Martin. You can identify these penalties when it's certain drivers, can't you, Martin?
That's he is beyond his start box, as Karim says, and that's a false start.
Piastri.
So that's a false start. Okay. Now we're on lap 5, and hopefully we're going to start getting some replays of the start soon. For those of you that have recorded this Grand Prix and will ever watch it back, I want you to listen to commentary and pick out when they refer to the dirty air here in Bahrain. Because at the Japanese Grand Prix, there was a lot of dirty air, wasn't there? And that was the reason there was very little overtaking, because as soon as the cars get in the dirty air, it all gets difficult. And that obviously is the reason here in Bahrain why that we didn't see any overtaking. The dirty air. Well, we did see some overtaking, didn't we? Oh, I don't know what the narrative is here. Right, still on lap 5. Let's have a listen to this and then we'll play it through slow-mo. So, firstly, we'll have a listen.
Now has Max Verstappen for company, pushes Verstappen, forces him to the wide extremity. Verstappen looked like he went off the road, dipped a tyre into the gravel. Did he go all 4 wheels off the track there as he muscled his way past Carlos Sainz and up into 7th? They've widened that white line. Did he stay on the line, Martin?
He doesn't leave me a car's width.
What was that, Max? He doesn't leave me a car's width? Do you leave anybody a car's width, Max? I can think of plenty of times where you don't leave cars a car's width. You're the first on the radio when you don't get left a car's width, aren't you? Let's watch that back. Let's watch it back. So, quarter speed. What you've got is Antonelli, and you get Carlos Sainz and Max Verstappen on the outside. So let's have a look. Press play. So what are we seeing? Coming into a corner, locations. So we're at the braking zone. Max is, well, let's just actually go back a little bit. Let's give Max the benefit of doubt, because the determination is, where are they at the braking zone to the corner, and who is entitled to what room around that corner. Martin will still go with the narrative about the relative locations of the cars at the apex to the corner. That's too late to determine. It's too late to determine who's entitled to what room, because by the time you've reached the apex, you're already travelling at a speed that you're travelling at on a line that you're on, and that is going to take you out of that corner in a certain way. And so therefore the apex is beyond the point of decision making. The decision making has to be on entry to corner, because that determines the line you take and the speed you take around that corner, which dictates where you come out of that corner. You can't have that dictated mid-corner. Hence this notion of braking zone. Where are the two cars relative to one another at the braking zone? Therefore, who is entitled to what around that corner? That's where these parameters for what's acceptable in driving, code of conduct, overtaking guidelines, they like to call them. That's why they've been like they've been for years. But they gaslight, they lie, they try and now pretend, oh, it's about the apex. Oh, and why is that? It's because Max fucks it in to try and just smash you out the way, get to the apex first. Oh, and we'll use that token to validate that. No, that's not how it is. That's not acceptable. It's about where these cars are at the braking zone as to who's entitled to which room. Are you entitled to be left room, or are you not? So let's have a look. So, having rewound it, we're on the approach to the corner. Max is the car that's coming from behind, attacking, okay, and has got himself, you can see these DHL boards. Max is on the outside and he's getting himself almost level. He's got himself more than halfway alongside. Difficult to fully tell. Got himself more than halfway alongside on the outside. Now, I believe you have to be fully level. Okay, the exact when you are on the inside attempting the overtaking maneuver, you have to be at least halfway alongside the car that you're seeking to overtake in order to be afforded track room. When you're trying to make a move around the outside, I believe you need to be fully alongside. Max, I believe here, is over halfway alongside. I do not know exactly what the determination is, whether it's more than halfway or whether it's fully alongside. But let's have a look at the situation anyway. So the science starts edging ahead here. Max wasn't far off away from being fully alongside anyway. Here is the apex, or close to the apex, the midpoint of the corner, the point of the corner whereby you are beginning to straighten yourself out of that corner. And so Sainz is clearly ahead. Max is half a car length behind at that point. At that stage, I've just been a fraction too slow. Max's front wheel was about level with Sainz's rear wheel. But because Max is on a wider line, able to carry more speed, Max is now coming back at him. And they now look about side by side. If anything, if you draw a line across the track, is Max's nose fractionally ahead? It's touch and go. They're pretty much side by side, I'd say. And is Carlos Sainz leaving him a car's width or any track room? See, even leaving him room for his tyres to be on the track. And the answer is no. He's not, is he? No. So Sainz is guilty of forcing Verstappen off the track. Now, due to the thickness of that white line, Max does keep his tyre on the white line. But the infringement there is that if Max was eligible for track room on exit of that corner due to his location on entry to the corner, which I'm not going to deny him this, then Sainz hasn't left him room on exit. But remember this, if Max expects to be left room on exit, then Max, when other drivers do the same to you, you have to leave them room on exit. And all of you that are fans of Max Verstappen, you need to understand that Max needs to leave those cars room on exit too. Learn about the sport, kids. But Max holds it out, giving him the inside line for the next set of corners and makes it through. So, the talking point being there is, yes, it does appear that Max was probably close, if not eligible, to be afforded that room on track. He wasn't left that room, he was crowded off the track by Sainz. But he still kept it in there and made that overtake. So, the infringement was probably by Sainz, but Max gained the position anyway. Had he not have been able to gain that position, then it's probably likely that Sainz would have been guilty of an infringement, preventing Max from making that position gain that he otherwise should have been eligible to get. Now, at some point, I'm going to go back through historic Grand Prix and go through how they talked about it then. Okay, because that will give me a greater way of trying to explain to you what that criteria actually is, whether it's more than halfway alongside or whether it's actually fully level with the car you're trying to overtake when you're trying to overtake around the outside. I'm disappointed in the fact that I can't give you a factual account of this at the moment. I'm hedging my bets in between being either fully alongside or more than halfway alongside. When you're on the inside, you have to be at least halfway alongside to be afforded track room. On the outside, more than halfway or fully alongside, I'm not exactly certain, but I hope that that is helping to some degree, if not giving you the full picture. But Martin Brundle will give you this explanation.
It looks like he was on the line. I need to see a replay of that, but this leaving a car's width on the outside of the corner very much depends where you were at the apex, whether you've earned the right to some space on the outside. They've changed the rules for.
So it's nothing to do with where you are at the apex, Martin. You're supposed to be the expert of the sport. I've just explained it's nothing to do with where you are at the apex, because that is too late to then make adjustments. You're already at mid-corner, on a certain line, on a certain trajectory, at a certain speed, okay? And you are clearly attempting to remain on the track, and you can only remain on the track if the car on the inside affords you that room, but the car on the inside is already arrived at the apex at a certain speed, on a certain line, on a certain trajectory, which is going to take his car to a certain point on exit of that corner. And you can't, at apex, change that, because it's too late. You're already traveling at that speed on that line. So if you're on line to go out to the outside of the track, not affording a car on the outside any room, you're already at the speed and you're already on the line that's going to take your car to there. You need to know on entry to the corner, have I got to leave the car on my outside room? And if I have, I've got to take this corner in a certain way, which means on exit of that corner, there is track room left on the outside. And the only way you can do that is by adjusting your speed and line on entry to corner to ensure that you exit the corner in the manner that affords some room. So it's utter bullshit from Brundle. Lying to the kids. Simple physics, okay? And he's lying to the kids. Anyway, we're getting a replay now. So I'm gonna play some of this through, but I need to change speed at times. Right then, this is a replay of the start, the overhead. So let's have a look what's going on. So we're going down to turn 1. You can see what the cars are all doing relative to one another on the track. Norris gets a good start. Hamilton does get a really good start. So if you look at Hamilton on the inside of Sainz and Verstappen here, Verstappen actually gets a poor start. So you've got Piastri and Russell, Piastri on the inside there, and then you've got Leclerc and Norris, and then we've got you got Antonelli in there, haven't you? Who am I missing? Antonelli and I'm missing somebody there. Who's that? Can't think at the moment. Let's have a look. I'm missing Gasly. That was Gasly. So this should be a bit clearer. Norris, Russell, and then you've got Leclerc with the inside line, Norris on the outside, Gasly right on the apex there of turn 1, Antonelli on the outside. And here you are, Hamilton and Sainz and Verstappen. So let's have a look at this through. Now as they come round this corner, okay, look at the relative positions. Hamilton appears to come out of this poorly. Now, for me to criticise somebody who's an 8-time world champion of this sport is utterly ridiculous. I've no idea what it feels like driving a Formula One car. I've no idea the levels of grip that Hamilton was experiencing at that moment in time, and therefore what he needed to do to keep control of that car. Okay, so being critical is wrong, but let's just have a look. If you look at how this car kind of straightens up, seems to lose momentum. There, see the back end seems to kick out a bit on Hamilton's car, just in that fraction there, losing him forward momentum because he's a nose ahead of Sainz at that point. He's currently so there's first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. So Hamilton's 7th here after that start, ahead of Sainz, ahead of Verstappen. But now look what happens. Because of that little bit of a kicking out of the back end, it slowed him down and Sainz has got the run on him. And obviously Sainz would have been able to carry a bit more speed around that corner as well. But now look at this. So this is turn 2, entry to turn 2. Well, Hamilton, is he at a point where he should be allowed track room on the outside? Well, that's not dissimilar to the Verstappen's location relative to Sainz, and Verstappen felt he was allowed room on the outside. So there's the apex. Exit was the room for Hamilton on the track. Well, Hamilton's line was such that had he had tried to, at this point here, tried to keep on the track, Sainz's line was crowding him off of it. So, Hamilton then leaves the track, loses momentum, and Verstappen goes through. So there's Hamilton having made a good start up to 7th, back down to 9th within, this is turn 3. So that's that one. You can see back here there's crowding between this is one of the RBs and the stake on the outside. Next bit's a bit of audio. We're back to another replay, different angle of the grid. Can't actually show you the footage, but you can hopefully hear it. Well, you will be able to hear it.
Now here is Lando Norris on the right-hand side of your screen.
Lando is over his grid box.
Lando is over his grid box. Max, the little snitch. Okay. So, yes, Lando is guilty of a false start. Now, I want you to hear what Brundle has to say about that. So, having cut to Karun for Karun to explain Lando's situation, again, we cut back to Crofty, and Crofty asking Brundle. You see, at the Grand Prix where Crofty and Brundle are co-commentating, Crofty pretends he doesn't know anything about Formula One and always has to ask Martin because Crofty doesn't know. But the events where Brundle's not there, Crofty seems to regain his knowledge about Formula One. He's been commentating on it for what, well over 12 years. So you'd think he'd know something about it, but he pretends he doesn't know when he's got Martin Brundle sat alongside him. Anyway, let's listen to what Brundle has to say.
What's the ruling, Martin? You've got to have a bit of the tyre in contact, or is it if a bit of the tyre is overhanging the white line, is that enough? I don't know.
There can be no relative movement when the lights go out. That's absolutely certain.
What's the ruling, Martin? Well, there can be no relative movement when the lights go out. That's absolutely certain. Yep. Okay.
But you've got to be, whether it's left, right, or forward, you've got to be within your grid box allocation.
Whether it's left, right, or forward, you've got to be in your grid box allocation. Right, so no, you're not allowed to be over your grid box in any direction. All right, thanks for that, Martin.
And you have got to be very confident in your car and driving ability if you're Ollie Behrman there. There wasn't much of a gap, he drove straight through it. That was an excellent start from the young man from Chelmsford as we watch Kimi Antonelli down the straight here towards Carl.
Now, I'm going to play you through the slow-mo of this, okay? And look at the move that Antonelli puts in. Look where he is. Look at Sainz's car fully ahead, braking zone. You've heard the engine tone, the down change, so we're decelerating, braking zone of the corner. Antonelli's not halfway alongside, okay? You're not going to be able to see this at full speed, but you will see it at reduced speed, okay? And I will keep the audio on, which sounds a bit nasty in the slow-mo, but listen to how Brundle describes this manoeuvre.
Sainz squeezes him towards the inside and he just gets the car stopped to get that move done.
Kimi was lucky there that he was up against an experienced driver because it was a bit of a hospital pass, that one. He sort of coasted in, really, rather than really claiming the corner.
So that was a bit of a hospital pass by Kimi. So let's go and have a look at that hospital pass by Kimi then. Let's slow it down and let's go through it. So we go through the speed down to a quarter speed and let's have a look.
Towards Carlo.
So he's behind in the braking zone to the corner.
Sainz squeezes him towards the inside,
leaving no track room on the outside. Dive bomb, yeah, and that's not a good way of doing things. Brundle describes it as a bit of a hospital pass, doesn't he? Why? Because it's a dodgy overtaking manoeuvre, and was lucky that Sainz got out of the way of it. Shouldn't have had to get out of the way of it. Isn't it strange, though, that Brundle can describe that as a bit of a hospital pass when it's Antonelli, but when it's another driver, he can't do it.
And from the young man from Chelmsford who watched in the Antonelli and down the straight head towards Carlo.
Clearly decelerating, clearly down changing. You can hear the engine note. Fully behind. Carlos Sainz has got the entitlement to the line around the corner. Carlos Sainz, the car in front, is entitled now to go around that corner and hit the apex of that corner on the racing line, because that's where his car is in the location. Now what he's done is acknowledged that this car isn't going to stop. This car is not going to yield. So he's afforded it room. Shouldn't have had to. Sainz squeezes him? No, this is a dive bomb.
Towards the inside. He just gets.
And Brundle will again, like I say the following.
The car stopped to get that move done.
Kimi was lucky there that he was up against an experienced driver, because it was a bit of a hospital pass, that one. He sort of
Absolutely right, Martin.
coasted in, really, rather than really claiming the corner.
And that's
Coasted in. Dive bomb.
Max Verstappen, who I think.
Right. That was Max being forced off the track, I think, from Max's point of view. I can't play footage, unfortunately, at full speed. So we'll get to the next bit. Okay, talking point. I just want you to listen to the audio here.
Norris gets a 5-second time penalty for a false start, which we predicted was going to happen and is now confirmed.
So that means he can work his way through that. It's not a drive-through, it's not a stop and go, it's not a 10-second penalty. He can work his way with that car. I don't know where he stands with George Russell, but it certainly puts him at a huge disadvantage to Piastri, who's down the road anyway at the moment. But I think in that car, Norris could still work his way through 5 seconds.
I was going to say, why?
So, Norris can still work his way through 5 seconds. Now, here's the thing. Norris started 6th on the grid. He's then done a faulty start, because he's out of position, and on that start he's made it from 6th up to 3rd. Well, that is a significant advantage. Okay, his car has moved maybe half a metre at most, but the reality is that's classed as a false or faulty start, and he's gone from 6th to 3rd. Now that's a big gain, and we're also aware of the difficulty in overtaking. So he's gained 3 positions by having started in an illegal position, which impacts the ability to gain those positions. It might be minuscule, but it's still an impact. And having gained those 3 positions, you're then only hit with just 5 seconds. Now, if you're not immediately made to give these positions back that you've gained, well, you can then gain those 5 seconds on the competitors and not lose what you've gained in terms of grid positions. I feel that these penalties that they apply need to be proportional to the gain that has been made, and then they need to be punishing. So if you commit an infringement, you receive a penalty which which makes you in a worse position than you were before you committed the infringement. So firstly, they should restore you back to where you should have been and then apply a penalty. You should have been made to drop to 6th position and then go, well, you get a 5-second penalty for doing something wrong. But you've gained 3 positions, so they get wiped out and then you get 5 seconds. Otherwise, you can effectively go, wow, I might as well jump the start, gain 3 positions, and take the hit of 5 seconds. You might disagree, but all I'm saying is he's done something wrong. He's gained 3 positions, and the penalty is not going to rob him of those 3 positions. It's not going to put him back behind those 3, is it? So, and here's the thing, he's afforded the time with which to choose when to take that penalty rather than have to take it immediately. You can build up the time ahead. Like Martin Brundle just said, you can work your way through that. That's not really a penalty then, is it? It's not really a penalty that causes you any negative consequence if you're able to work your way through that penalty. Yeah, it's negative in terms of his ability to 5 seconds lost relative to the cars ahead of him. 5 seconds lost relative to the cars behind him, but he can build 5 seconds on the cars behind him. So, yeah. Now it's bit of time now for Martin Brundle sucking the Verstappen cock. So let's have a listen.
And here we can just have a little look. That's Max Verstappen looking over, and there you see Lando moving, and Max has spotted that. And then we heard the radio saying that he's gone too far forward.
Max didn't miss anything, does he?
No.
Qatar last year, he somehow drives everybody else's car as well as his.
Max doesn't miss anything, does he? He somehow drives everybody else's car as well as his own. Max, incredible, the best you've ever seen. Not only drives his own car, he drives everybody else's as well. No, none of the other Formula One drivers are that good. Just Max. Just incredible. He's so good he can drive everybody else's car for them as well. Because we hear the football commentators talk about Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo, the greats of world football, in the same manner as well, don't they? Oh, they play everybody else's game on their team as well, don't they? No, it's just Max can drive everybody else's car.
No.
Qatar last year, he somehow drives everybody else's car as well as his.
It's the mark of a champion.
That's the mark of a champion. Absolutely right there, Crofty. Crofty wants to have a go. Get out of the way, Martin. Let me have a go.
Who can multitask. Carew, talking of multitasking, about 5 screens he's watching at the moment.
Well, 7 at the moment. But
Now, I want you to look at the action on the track at the moment, okay? Some drivers defend really hard against some drivers, but not so much against others. So let's have a look at this. In slow-mo. It's coming towards us. It's coming towards us. It's coming towards us. Somebody's trying to overtake. That's not the line you take to anybody else, is it, Carlos Sainz? Now, you could argue, who's ahead at the apex? That would be Hamilton, in the same way that Sainz was ahead of Verstappen. Oh, he's trying to go for the inside line there. it very much seems like many of the drivers try a lot harder when they're being attempted to be passed by a certain driver, and yet wave some other drivers through. That's all I'll say about this. Anyway, what we see several corners later, after taking different lines relative to science through different corners to try to then exit certain corners with faster speed, so you've got more momentum, giving you the chance to the overtake. That's what real motor racing drivers have to do when cars are similarly paced, rather than just having a rocket ship of a car. You have to use craft, and the craft is by positioning your car as you go around the circuit to get a better exit, so that you have the chance of doing this sort of thing. But if you've got a rocket ship designed by Adrian Newey, you don't need that. You can just be a genius driver, the best we've ever seen. You don't need any craft. You don't need to bother setting the other driver up, dummying, putting them on lines that are going to be making them have a slower exit than you, ensuring you can carry more momentum. No, you don't need to bother with that. You can just drive aggressively and put your foot down. Pedal it faster than everybody else. And but you can see Science there battling hard against the other Red Bull there. The second Red Bull, the worst car on the grid. You know how it is. Lap 9. Hope you're all having a lovely time. Right, lap 10. Antonelli again. We've seen him do a dive bomb on Sainz, and Sainz leave him some room. Look at this. Two cars around a corner. Oh, he's left the other car track room. See how that works, kids? See how that works? Did they have to decide at the apex who was entitled to track room? What were their locations at the apex? Let's take this back. All right, so let's play this again. So because this is on quarter speed, it does go back quite a long time. But here they come. This is the Alpine, I believe, it's Gasly. Antonelli behind him. Pulls out. Leaves it late. But doesn't come over to this far side of the track, does he? Who wins the race to the apex? Well, does that matter? Because it's not Gasly. Does that mean he's not entitled to track room? There's the apex. Who's in the lead? Well, from this angle, very much like it's Antonelli is in the lead, because it very much looks like from this angle that the front wheels of Gasly are behind the front wheels. I mean, yeah, he definitely is, isn't he? So Antonelli's ahead at the apex. What does that mean? Does that mean he doesn't have to leave Gasly room on exit? No, it doesn't, does it? So why are we all bullshitting about this? That's a good move. That's fine. Late, but he left the other guy track room. But see what happens there. The guy on the wider line is able to carry more speed and get on the gas a bit better and have better traction out the corner. And that's what enables him to come back. That's why you get these drivers that do these dive bombs and then go all the way over to the other side of the track to block the other car off. Dirty driving. But he got left this side. Gasly got got left track room on the outside, as he was entitled to. 2 cars on entries to the corner. Both are entitled to track room. Both had track room. No issues with that. No issues with that. Nothing to do with their relative locations at the apex of the corner. Now here's a quality bit of driving. Okay, he's tried it one way. He's tried it down the inside. Okay, left his fellow competitor track room on the outside. Couldn't make that stick. So what's he doing now? Look at what's coming towards us. Let me just get rid of the volume because that sounds horrible. Play it now. So we've got Gasly, behind him is Antonelli. The racing line is more down here, but Gasly's trying to kind of do this maneuver to defend, pushing Antonelli wide. But what Antonelli does is then hold back and sweep into the apex, giving him a flatter exit of the corner, able to get the power down in a straight line quicker, and he powers himself through. Good driving. Good driving. So, young lad, all right? He's raw, and he'll have a bit to learn, but there's potential. In the same way that many of us will have seen the potential in Oscar Piastri from the moment he came into the sport, Antonelli has got a lot of potential. Obviously, it helps if you're in a competitive car, but that demonstrates that the kid should have a decent career in F1. Time will tell. It's not good enough to yet declare him the best we've ever seen. That's one thing I will say. You have to hand him 4 world championships before you're able to do that, and declare him better than an 8-time world champion. Anyway, okay, I want you to listen to Brundle again, fluffing Max Verstappen. This is riding on board with Max Verstappen, trying to challenge Pierre Gasly for position. Brundle explain it.
Ahead of him, DRS for Gasly, DRS for Verstappen, more pace for the Red Bull, but not enough to draw him alongside the Frenchman in the Alpine.
When you start fighting like that, you both lose so much time. The driver in front goes defensive. He's now arrived too tight into the corner, has to slow down, slows you down, and you have to be really careful you don't suddenly lose 5-6 seconds in a squabble.
Last lap.
Yeah, it's the squabble that will cost Max Verstappen 5 or 6 seconds. 5 or 6 seconds? Now, you see here, you'll see these time intervals here, and you'll see that Gasly's plus 1.49 seconds behind Antonelli, and Verstappen's half a second behind Gasly. Okay, what you don't see is that interval between Antonelli and Gasly go out to 5 or 6 seconds. Like Martin's just described. Yeah, what these squabbles will cause you to lose 5 or 6 seconds. Kids, just check these times over here and see if that's true. See if these intervals extend out to 5 or 6 seconds while they're squabbling. Hint. Okay, I'm going to give you the answer here. You don't see that. But you could believe Martin if you wanted to. You could believe the man that's paid to lie to you, to excite you, to divert you. Oh, this is happening. Oh, that's happening. Oh, be careful that this could be happening. Oh, this might be bad for Max. Oh, or you could just look at the times and go, yeah, it's actually not costing them 5 or 6 seconds, is it? Anyway, we'll move on. Now let's have a look at this together in the slow-mo. Right. You can't touch the car for 5 seconds because he's got a penalty. There's a guy that's blowing air into the radiators, into the air intakes of this car. Let this guy here, okay, with this DeWalt air blower, okay. There's me advertising DeWalt products. Send me some free shit, DeWalt. Anyway, let's have a look at this.
And
right, so this is the guy approaching the car to blow air into it. Now, is that interfering with the car? Well, I would suggest that it is, okay, and being stationary for 5 seconds without having air blown into it should not be causing that car to overheat. So why is he doing it? But pay attention, does this item of equipment make contact with this car? At full speed, it's difficult to pick out. Let's see if we can pick it out here. I haven't done it slow-mo, but does it look like this piece of equipment has actually touched the car? Does it kind of jolt? Does it actually touch the car? Because if any part of this equipment touches that car, that counts as interfering with the car. We've seen before where the jack has touched the car before the penalty is served, and they are made to serve another penalty. So let's see if Lando Norris should have actually had another penalty here. Let's have a look.
pits comes Lando Norris. You can't touch the car if you're in papaya. Is matching George Russell's times and trying to stay with him.
So, look at this. It seems to jolt, doesn't it? Have a look. See if this piece of equipment, this DeWalt air blower, see if it jolts.
And into the pits comes Lando Norris. You can't touch the car if you're in.
Inconclusive. I don't know. Did he touch the car? Are there any other angles which could give us that view of whether that piece of equipment connected with that car? All I'm saying is that it appears to have a bit of an erratic maneuver, a bit of a slight change of direction, which would indicate it's kind of bumped off something. That's the way I see it anyway. And if it did touch the car, that's not served the penalty correctly, so that's another penalty. Anyway, we'll carry on. So, I mean, this would be a reason for voiding this race, just in the same way that we should void the race that Renault cheated in back in 2008. You know, the one where Alonso still got the trophy for, Singapore 2008, where Ferrari made an error with their exiting lights, telling Massa to exit the pits before time. This time, Red Bull, their lights kept Max stationary for longer than he should have been stationary for. You know, the error by the pit team, or the machinery, the technology, releasing at the wrong point in time, causing a driver to his race to be impacted, because Max was slowed down by this by, you know, maybe a second. This race shouldn't count for the World Championship, should it? Especially if somebody else cheated. Did anybody cheat in this race? Did anybody cheat and get a penalty for that? Because you know, if you cheat, you normally get a penalty for it. And if you found you've cheated and won the race, you'd get a penalty, and you'd get the race win stripped from you, wouldn't you? Everybody else's results would count, but you wouldn't be allowed to win. You'd just get that stripped from you. Let me know what you think in the comments section. But here, yeah, the Red Bull lights, they do stay on for longer. It does seem that all the mechanics are finished on the car. They're ready to release, but the lights say no. Let's have a look, because Crofty's just told us we'll have a look. Let's have a look.
At what happened here to Max Verstappen. There was a red light on, so he was held at the pit box.
Man, that's a 4 asterisks. What word could that be? And I think now you get a penalty for swearing as well. According to Mohammed Ben Sulayem, you can't express frustration. Well, you should be able to express frustration. They've got the ability to bleep it out. Not the best example to set to the kiddies, but you know, these things are frustrating. Let's have a look again.
Yeah, just watch the lights. Tyres come off, it's still red. And he goes before there's any green there as well.
Yeah, and they weren't holding him for somebody else coming down the pit lane with the unsafe release risk. That's a good view of the Ferrari front wing.
Right, we'll carry on. Now this is quite significant. All right, lap 13 of 57. Sonoda's just pitted for Red Bull and had a similar problem to Max in that the red light system was malfunctioning, slowing him down, not releasing him very quickly. Listen to this.
Yeah, so Red Bull, who've made a feature of very fast pit stops over the years, had a 4.7 second pit stop with Max Verstappen, which is their slowest stop of the season so far.
And that's something that's quite significant because Red Bull have been excellent at their pit stop, consistently excellent at their pit stops. You know, there's no arguing that the Red Bulls were the most well-drilled team for their pit stops. And now they're not. What's happening there? What's happening there? Because why would that break down? They train for this thing. They're consistently producing it. They pride themselves in it. What's going on? Which makes me suspicious of the notion of contrivance. Little things can be done here and there to impact people's results. And I think what we're going to see over the course of this season is at some events the Red Bull car will be allowed to win, and it will be Max Verstappen being the greatest we've ever seen, single-handedly, against all the odds, able to do this by himself. And at other events, that car won't be competitive and the team will be making mistakes and McLaren will be winning them ones. And then at others, oh, well, Max has done this single-handedly again. And we're going to see this oscillation. Keep the kiddies excited, oh yeah. But we'll see. Only time will tell. Now that I've said it, now that somebody's made the prediction, hopefully it won't happen like that. But let's wait and see. Okay, lap 14. Let's have a listen to the audio.
No further investigation, say the FIA stewards, for an incident as he locks up, as we talk about him, between Max Verstappen and Carlos Sainz. Remember at turn 4, did Max overtake off the track? No, he didn't. He had at least one wheel on the white line as he went round.
I think that investigation might well have been, was he left enough space by Sainz as well? So they've got to pick Piastri now, otherwise he'll lose track position.
So, thoughts on that? Was Max Verstappen's wheels on the white line? If it's on the white line, it is classed as being still on the track. Yes, he was. So Max wasn't fully off the track, so he remained on the track. Did Carlos Sainz leave him track room? Well, he was technically on the track, even though he's crowded him right to the edge of the track. So it was dodgy from Sainz. I would suggest that is crowding off the track. But having been crowded off the track, Max has made the overtake stick. So I think that that's fine. I think if you play those set of circumstances through, Max hasn't left the track. Max has got some contact with the white line. Sainz has committed an infringement, but Max has made or potentially crowded him as far as you're going to get, but Max has made the overtake. I think that's no further action required. Should be the right decision on that situation. So it is what it is. It's a thick white line, though. If you look at that white line, it is a thick white line. Let's have a listen to those experts in the Formula One commentary box again.
Sainz makes his stop for the Williams team. Softs go off, medium go on. And I like this, Martin. We've got a change in strategy, different tyres at different times, and that always gives us a bit of action and overtaking.
Surprising how much.
That's it. That always gives us a bit of overtaking, different tyres at different times. Unless there's the dirty air, because the dirty air is difficult to follow in, making overtaking almost impossible. Depends which narrative they want to give. So we're on lap 15. We're about a quarter of the way through. I'm going to end this video here because there's a lot of talking points and a lot of things I've got to break down into the sections. It's going to take too long. We're going to talk about the strategy of being on mediums and then changing on to mediums and whether that's a good thing to do it in that order. We're going to look at the crashes, the penalties handed out, and when similar incidents, there is no further action required. Lots of those in this race, and we'll look at track limits as well and what penalties are applied to who in relation to that. So hopefully this has just made you look upon these races slightly differently. I think there's some of you that view the contents of this channel and watch Grand Prix racing in a very similar way to I do. But these are the things that I look at when I'm watching these races. There is very little consistency, and that's part of the problem. The way that certain manoeuvres, certain drivers, certain things are spoken about. Well, when they're being spoken about certain people, they're spoken about one way, and when they're speaking about other people, they speak about them another way. The action is described in different ways, different reasons, and often it's utter bullshit. And that's because they are talking utter bullshit. So hopefully, when I'm explaining things to be a certain way and you're seeing the reasoning, even if that reasoning, like I told you about when you're on the outside, and I don't know whether you've got to be more than halfway alongside it or fully alongside, I'm not 100% certain about the exact criteria, but hopefully it's giving you the perspective of an understanding that it's the location at braking zone that determines whether or not you're entitled to track room, not the position at the apex. And these are the things that really need identifying and educating the fan base of the sport appropriately, rather than just filling the airwaves with verbal diarrhea and bullshit just to excite the kiddies. Thank you for your time. More to come as soon as I get the time. Cheers.